All right. Well, we're a couple minutes after 7 Eastern time, so we might as well get started. Um, Thank you to those of you who have joined. My name is Madeline Barr. Here, oops, here we go. Um, Here from Resonant Energy, joined by Matt Brennan from CollectiveSun. And just a couple things before we get started. Everyone has been set up on mute. There's a lot of people on this webinar. We do want to be able to make it interactive and answer any questions you have. So if you see in your screens, there should be a Q&A box. You can please feel free to type questions there, and we'll leave some time at the end of the session to get to some of the questions, and whatever we don't get to, we'll follow up and send a list of question and answers afterwards. And our goal is to, we'll take about maybe 45 to 60 minutes and wrap up by about 8 p.m. Eastern time. So, so to dive in, again, appreciate everyone for joining. This webinar is, I would say, primarily designed for nonprofits to get some more information about different solar options for their organizations. We hope to speak to other questions as well, and are so glad to be joined by other folks from across the industry, and I think actually across the country. And for those of you who are on the call who have moved forward with either Resonant Energy or CollectiveSun, we see this as an opportunity to sort of get a sense behind the scenes and know some of the people you've been talking with. So this is us on the call today. My name is Madeline Barr. I'm the VP of Outreach and Sales and a co-founder at Resonant Energy. Personally, my background is in energy efficiency, solar PV, electric vehicles, with, I would say, a special focus throughout my career in partnership development, technical sales, and community-wide programming. And excited to be here and really passionate about clean energy, and excited to be on this call with so many people and other experts to help us figure out how we can make this something accessible across the country. And I'm speaking to you today from Boston, Massachusetts, and joined by Matt Brennan out in California. So Matt, do you want to give a quick introduction?
Sure. Thanks, Madeline. Thanks for the intro. We're real excited to be a part of this. We've been working with Resonant for a number of years now. I think we've done more projects with you than we've done with anybody else. And that's a great thing. And yet we're out here in California. And I personally been doing PV mostly in storage since 2009. My background is in mechanical engineering. I started with CollectiveSun in 2012. So I've been at it for a bit, and our focus has always been on working with nonprofits. And Resonance is a great partner. There's a lot of mission alignment with Resonant Energy, and I'll leave it at that. And I'll talk a little bit more about CollectiveSun in a bit and how we work and how we work with contractors and with nonprofits.
Great. So here's our agenda for the session. We'll talk a little bit more about how each of our organizations work and how we work together. And then wanted to take some time to dive into what are the incentives for going solar, what do some of the numbers and the savings look like, how you can get involved, whether you are here on behalf of your nonprofit or if you're here from a solar provider or just someone interested in the expansion of clean energy. And then we'll try and keep some time towards the end for some Q&A. So Resonant Energy, we're based here in Boston, Massachusetts. We are an employee-owned B Corp certified company, and our mission really is to expand access to clean energy across nonprofits, across multifamily homes, affordable housing, seeing that solar is something that's really thriving in Massachusetts and has become a pretty, I don't know if I'd say mainstream, but a pretty common way for people to align their environmental and climate values with real strong energy saving, cost saving projects. But we've seen most of those benefits going to single family homes or utility scale projects, and not actually a solution across the urban space, so across mixed income for nonprofits, for houses of worship, other organizations that maybe don't fit into the traditional underwriting or credit requirements. So that's really what we seek to do, is to work with partners to address some of those barriers and make solar something that is truly accessible to any type of institution across our city landscape. We actually got our start here in this church that you see pictured. It's a second church in Dorchester, based right in the heart of Codman Square. And we just a few months ago relocated offices up the road to the neighborhood called Fields Corner, also in Dorchester. And our primary area where we work, for those of not, I think we have people from all over on the call tonight. Our focus is Massachusetts and New York. So some of what you'll hear will be specific to those regions, but we'll try and make sure we encompass everyone's interests and questions. A big portion of our work is in affordable housing. And so you can see in two of the top pictures in this kind of busy slide are two of our partners in the Boston area. In the top right corner is pictured Dorchester Bay Economic Development Corporation. They have rooftop solar on some of their commercial properties, and they were also an anchor institution for one of our equity and access focused programs called the Solar Access Program. And we're currently right now getting ready to install a portfolio project with Madison Park Development Corporation across a couple dozen of their properties that are sprinkled throughout the Boston area. We're a partner on a project, a very exciting project on the Brooklyn Army Terminal in New York. And we're also working with the New York Housing Authority to evaluate about 30 of their sites across New York City. And NYCHA, the New York Housing Authority, is one of the largest affordable housing organizations in the country. So very exciting to see them taking the step towards clean energy and making their sites renewable. Another big focus of our work is with houses of worship. This that you see pictured is First Baptist Church in Melrose. We love this picture because you can really get the sort of historical sense of the building and that stone facade. And then they have, most of the building is slate, but they had these fairly new asphalt shingles where the solar was installed just about 6 months ago. And that was part of a sort of multi-faith-based outreach initiative in Melrose called the Go Solar Melrose Big Roof Solar Program. I don't know if anyone from that program is on the call right now, but it was a very innovative, a very exciting initiative in Melrose that won a recognition from the Department of Energy Soul Smart Award. And according to a recent Interfaith Power and Light study, Massachusetts ranks #2 in the whole country for faith-based solar installations, second only to California. And for the Massachusetts installations, Resonant has worked on 30% of all of those projects. So a little bit about how we work and what is our role in this ecosystem. So I hope this diagram can help illustrate it a bit. We work as a hub to help identify some of the barriers that have prevented nonprofits and other tax-exempt organizations from going solar in the past. So we regularly will run competitive RFPs. We work with some of the top installation companies in Massachusetts. Right now, some of our partners include Sunbug Solar, Boston Solar, and Valiant Technologies. And we'll run these competitive bids to select a partner to work with us on a group of projects. And by doing that competitive bidding and by having a pretty steady stream of new projects, we're able to get our clients very affordable sort of bulk purchase pricing on their installation. We then, on the other side of that diagram, we have an analysis team that is working to evaluate all of the different scenarios that a nonprofit could access. So each time we look at a new client, we run about 15 different scenarios that evaluate the various incentives the organization may be eligible for based on their electricity usage, the utility zone that they're in, the size of their solar array, and we'll create a custom proposal for each organization that outlines different financing offers and different pathways they can go towards either ownership or a third-party financed solar array. And our goal really is to meet the organizations where they're at, understanding that organizations have different financial priorities, different intentions with their building, with other projects. So our goal is to evaluate the two best pathways for a nonprofit to be able to move forward with solar, typically an ownership or a hybrid ownership array, or a fully third-party financed system. And then we partner with local organizations such as Massachusetts Interfaith Power and Light, the Melrose Energy Commission, Town Green 2025, to really get these programs into the hands of organizations that can use them, and to work with them and to stay accountable to our clients and to the needs of the nonprofits. And one of the financing options that I mentioned briefly that we're going to really feature in this webinar is what we call the hybrid ownership or the solar power agreement that we do in partnership with CollectiveSun. And I would say it's probably one of our most popular programs because it allows the nonprofit to benefit from a portion of that federal investment tax credit that would otherwise be left on the table. So what I'm going to do now is hand it back off to Matt to speak a little bit more about CollectiveSun's role and how we're able to leverage that federal tax credit even for tax-exempt organizations.
Thanks for that, Madeline. Thanks for the intro. And the way that Resonant describes our product, the hybrid ownership, we like a lot. We actually didn't come up with that, you did, but we found that resonates with people. But I think I'll take a little bit of a step back and just talk about what it is that CollectiveSun does, and you touched on it, in that a tax-exempt entity, a nonprofit, a church, a synagogue, or really any tax-exempt entity cannot use a tax credit. They don't have a tax appetite. So when we started CollectiveSun in 2011, we identified nonprofits as being underserved, not only with financing, but just with solar in general. They were difficult to get solar deployed on nonprofits because there weren't a lot of incentives. They were leaving a lot of money on the table with the tax credit. So we identified that early. We focused on nothing but nonprofits across the country, and we have found partners like Resonant Energy that do the same. So it's been a very good relationship. And what we do basically is it's basically we offer a 12% off a coupon. Now there's a 26% tax credit out there right now. And if you are a for-profit or if you are an individual, you can install solar on your building or your home and get a 26% federal income tax credit. Now, obviously, a nonprofit, like I said, cannot use that. They just leave it on the table. So we have investors that can use that tax credit. And one thing I want to mention, because I know I saw some names on the list here that attended: Nicole, Keith, John, some others. So you're familiar with who we are, but with our investors in managing these tax credits, we partnered with a company called Sun4 Solutions years ago, and they just manage tax equity investors. That's all they do. That's their, well, I shouldn't say that's all they do, but that's a big part of what they do. They manage a tax fund. And why do we need people to manage tax funds? It's because this tax credit is only eligible to a certain kind of investor with the right kind of tax appetite. So it's not as easy as just finding high net worth individuals. So we have to rely on people who have those relationships over years. Again, that was Sunforce, and a lot of people probably on the call may recognize their name. But at the beginning of the year, we formed a joint venture with them, and it's CollectiveSun Partners. So there won't be as much, let's say, market confusion. So it's just one entity, one umbrella. So that was for some of you that already know us. I just wanted to kind of announce that to you and let you know. But getting back to what we do, with this 12% off coupon, our investors can use the tax credit that the church or the synagogue or the mosque cannot. So the nonprofit is responsible for coming up with the first 88% of the project cost, and we come up with the last 12%. And we have quite a few relationships for finding that last 88%. We work a lot with Greenworks Lending. We have a partnership called Collective Pace. Resonant Energy has access to lenders that some of these lenders are misaligned, and they will provide the 88%. And over the past few years, we've done over 100 projects across 18 states. Some of these were the Resonant. And the Resonant projects, I think, are all just in Massachusetts. I don't think we've done outside of Massachusetts yet. But we work wherever solar leasing is allowed by the utility, we can work. And these are some examples of projects. Lots of these are churches. Bottom left-hand corner is a large church in Los Angeles. And there's actually a pottery school that we did. That may have been with Resonant, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's
if you want to go to the next slide. Yeah, that's a mud flat power. Yeah, there is mud flat. Yep. And Maddie, if you want to jump to the next slide. So again, it's, to keep it simple, we're a coupon. If you have I know your system may not be this large, let's say it was $1 million system. Instead of coming out of pocket for $1 million or getting a loan for $1 million, we can offer this 12% off discount. So the nonprofit only needs to raise $880,000. We put in the last 12%. And we have quite a few lenders that want to lend that 88%. So this is a zero down option for a lot of nonprofits. But some do have cash reserves and they just want to pay that 88% and be done with it. But this coupon or, us using the tax credits isn't really the only benefit. It's nice to get a lower cost, but the way the tax credit works is we need to own the system, and we need to own it for at least 6 years for us to fully monetize the tax credits. Why is that a good thing to the nonprofit? It's because CollectiveSun is responsible for owning the system, operating it, and maintaining it. And we also perform a production guarantee. Those are all good things for the nonprofit. It's just another added level of protection. And at the end of the 6th year, we transfer ownership back to the nonprofit, so they have ownership then. So, in a previous slide, Resonant Energy talked about that they do a rigorous financial and policy analysis. They do a lot of work to make sure that tier 1 equipment is being used, that the contractor's approved, it has the experience to do the job. And so that's one reason we really like working with Resonant, and probably a reason you should too. But we also provide some added benefits, again, because we own the system. So there's just a few different levels of protection, really, when you do these kinds of transactions with us and you work with a Resonant. And I think that's about it for those 2 slides. I think I'll send it back to you, Madeline.
Sure. And this slide is sort of wanted to offer kind of a preview of what we'll go into in a little bit more detail in a minute. But when we think about solar, and I know there's some people on this webinar with a lot of expertise and some people who are fairly new to thinking about it for their institution. The 3 main financial benefits that you can think of is, first, there's the federal investment tax credit. It had been 30% up until 2020 and has now stepped down to 26%. Where this applies is nationally to any tax eligible entity, for a solar installation. Another incentive is electricity savings, net metering. And this is the policy that refers to the actual electricity savings on your bill. And different states have different regulations around exactly what that value is going to be. In Massachusetts, for projects up into a certain size threshold, you can sell each kilowatt hour of excess electricity back to the utility Well, back to the utility, as long as it is one of the two main utilities, National Grid or Eversource, and get a credit for the same value, for that same retail value that you buy it at. That piece varies state by state. Most states have some form of net metering, of selling the excess electricity value back to the grid for a credit, but that actual value will vary. This third incentive here, some of you may be familiar with it. It's called the SMART incentive. That acronym stands for the Solar Massachusetts Renewable Target. This is a program that was created by the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources and is sponsored by National Grid and Eversource. And this is a really excellent opportunity for those of you who are based in Massachusetts, nonprofit, for-profit, whomever, because it is a cash incentive just based on your kilowatt hour production. So it's not a credit, it's just a direct deposit to your organization or to the owner of the solar array to your account. And that's Massachusetts only. And what I'll highlight in this is Matt had mentioned that CollectiveSun has to own the array for the first 6 years, but they allocate all of the savings, the electricity savings, and that SMART incentive back to your nonprofit. So their gain is only that federal investment tax credit, and your gain are these other two incentives, and frankly, a portion of that tax credit as well. So a lot going on this next slide. We wanted to sort of paint a picture of what some of the numbers would actually look like. And again, I know that the cost per watt and the cost of installation, all of these numbers are fairly specific to Massachusetts. But to just walk us through, where we were looking at a church that had a really excellent roof for solar. They could fit 56 kilowatts. And the initial upfront cost comes out to be about $3.22 per watt, which is about $170,000. The cost to the client after the CollectiveSun discount was $145,000, and dropping that down to $273 per watt. If anyone is doing the math, you'll realize that that is a 15% discount, because this project was built when the tax credit was 30% as opposed to 26%. So they were able to get a 15% discount off the top of their system. I'm going to the top right row now that says they covered 185% of their electricity use. So some of you who are maybe familiar with think, why would they cover more electricity than they need? In Eversource and National Grid territory, you only get a credit from the utility for that excess usage, which is why typically we would size the array to cover only 100% of your needs. But we worked with this church and a few of our partners in the Boston area to help them sell those credits to another nonprofit. And they sold them at a slight discount, which allowed this other nonprofit to then buy clean electricity at a discount from an institution that was right down the road. So they were getting combined that electricity sale and the electricity offset to their own bill was approximately 19 cents per kilowatt hour. So their total, well, and actually I'll mention right below that, the SMART incentive for their program was 20.9 cents per kilowatt hour. And in parentheses, I have here with the CSS adder, that represents the community shared solar adder. So under the SMART program, the state is trying to incentivize where it's possible to set up community shared solar installations. So this project, because they shared the solar with another institution, they got a bump in that total cash incentive that they were eligible for. So one row over to the left, their year one savings between the total production and their electricity savings and this SMART incentive came out to be $17,998. So when they took out a loan for this system, their year one loan payment was $13,000. They were cash flow positive from year one, which really was, this is a project that is, I would say it was able to get some of the best incentives in the state, and we're really, really excited about sharing this story. And so with the 15% discount, the extra incentive through the Mass SMART program, they were saving money even with a loan payment from day one of their solar installation. And then their 25-year savings after paying off that loan was still just under $200,000. We model out for 25 years because that's an industry standard. It's when a lot of the warranties are guaranteed for. But frankly, your solar will last longer than that. There might even be people on this call who have had solar installed 20, 30 years ago and can attest that. And there's just a project note under here that we assumed this project took out a 15-year, 5% interest loan. That's a standard. Resonant Energy works with mission-aligned lenders to get other organizations attractive loan offers like this one. And this is it. And for those of you who are local, this is East Congregational Church in Milton. A really beautiful installation. And we installed this one with the Boston Solar Company. So to speak a little bit about the SMART program, this is an initiative, for those of you who are more familiar with solar, you might have heard of the SREC program, then the SREC 2 program. Massachusetts has often had leading solar incentive programs. The SREC 1 was also a very lucrative program, stepped down to SREC 2, stepped down to the SMART program. And SMART was rolled out to replace these two former policies. And it was rolled out in November of 2018. And it's set up in declining blocks. So these capacity blocks fill up on a first come, first served basis. And the value that you can get under this program depends on the size of the installation, how it's interconnected to the grid, the utility you're in, and then any additional, we call them adders. So the community solar was an adder. Parking canopies have an adder. Community solar arrays that serve low-income homeowners have another adder. And so all of that is calculated into these declining blocks that will fill up on a first-come, first-served basis. But as soon as you get signed up for one of these incentives, you get that incentive for 10 or 20 years, depending on the size of the array. And again, it's just a direct deposit into your organization's bank account every month for 10 or 20 years. And our team, our analysis team, spends quite a lot of time doing estimates and predicting how quickly these blocks are filling up based on the current utility pipeline. We know that nonprofits don't have a single day decision-making process and often have to go through respective committees and a process to build buy-in and consensus. So when we create a proposal for you, we'll do our best to estimate several months out so that you, when you do bring it to your board, can say that it's with a very high level of certainty that you will fall into these incentives and get this incentive that we are estimating. So right now, the National Grid large projects are pretty fully subscribed, but there's still more room in the Eversource territory. So happy to speak more about that in too much detail. We can follow up afterwards, but just to give you an idea of how that program is set up. This is another interesting trend, I think, to point to. We often get questions about, we're looking at solar on a 25-year time horizon. What's going to happen to that technology over that amount of time? Super valid question. We know with cell phones are becoming, that technology becomes obsolete every couple of years. And this I wanted to point out to show that even though we've seen enormous strides in the cost of solar equipment and its power and its efficiency, specifically from 2010 to 2016, that curve has fairly leveled off. So I think we, between 2010 and 2015 is about a 45% drop in cost, and then, another 15 to 18% from 2015 to 2018. But just in the past few years, that rate of decrease has actually been slower than the rate of decrease of the state incentives. The state incentives we're seeing decrease between 8 and 10% a year, whereas now the cost of solar is really leveling off, so that's more of like a 5% decrease from 2017 to 2018. And this is through NREL, and we can we'll be happy to keep folks posted as we get new and more and more recent information. But a pretty striking curve in terms of the solar cost and really what's driving those costs. So why now? Why are we talking about this now? What kind of time urgency is there around this? The federal investment tax credit, as Matt and I had both mentioned, stepped down from 30% to 26% and will continue to step down over the next couple of years until it's fully phased out by 2022. So right now, for the 26% tax credit, we're looking at a 12% discount to nonprofits. And Matt can speak more on this, but it will continue to step down over the next couple of years. The SMART program, launched in December of 2018, is also declining as these blocks fill up on a first-come, first-served basis at about 10% in the total value of that incentive each year. And for those of you who are motivated by our ever-changing climate, we've got 12 years to stop significant change for a livable future. So the climate piece is real and is tangible. So we're about coming to the end of the presentation. Some of the next steps that you can think about if you are on this call representing a local nonprofit, you can request, if you're based in Massachusetts or New York, please follow up afterwards and we can talk about a custom proposal for your organization. If you are based anywhere in the other 48 states, you can speak with Matt at CollectiveSun. And if you are on this call out of interest to bring solar to your community, or as another developer or an installation partner, please also reach out and we can see what a partnership could look like. And this is our contact information. So what I'll do now is I see a few questions have come in throughout this little bit, and I will, Matt and I will take a look at them and follow up with some questions. Feel free to type into the Q&A if you haven't yet any questions that you would like us to either speak to or follow up with.
So, Madeline, would you like to go through the questions that we have? I answered some of them, but it might be worth just repeating them. Some would be better answered by you, but a few sound to be directed a little bit more at us. Do you mind if I kind of run through them?
No, please.
Okay. So Alan had a question for congregation members to participate in financing the project and receive tax benefits. This happens to be in Southern California. So Alan, let me answer your question for everybody's benefit. So two questions here. One, can the members of the congregation participate in the tax benefits? And two, sounds like can they also participate on the debt side? By debt, I mean where you loan money to the church, basically. So let me answer both. One, on the tax benefits. Yes, the investors could participate on the tax benefits, but they would be subject to passive activity loss limitation rules. And let me just repeat that for everybody's benefit in case you want to Google it. Again, that was passive activity loss limitation rules. And that's a very specific kind of tax appetite. Unfortunately, just having a high net income it doesn't help you with these transactions, because in order to do that, you'd have to offset ordinary income. And if that were the case, we wouldn't to be honest, need tax fund managers. It'd be very simple to do this. But we're looking for individuals or organizations that have the right kind of tax appetite. And they're hard to find. A lot of it comes from real estate. But if we were to find a tax investor with that kind of tax appetite that was mission aligned with a nonprofit, we would certainly work with them. So if anybody out there knows them, please send them our way. We will talk with them. And, if they're mission aligned with, let's say, their church or their synagogue or their mosque or temple, they're probably not going to want the same returns that a traditional tax equity investor would want. So there could be additional savings for you there. So the second part of that question is on the debt side, because as we spoke earlier, we're going to put in 12% and then we're going to look for that other 88%. So we call that 88% the debt, but it's just when I say debt, I just mean the loan. If the congregation wanted to lend money to their church or synagogue or their nonprofit, sure, we can do that. We can set up a structure for that. We're licensed by the SEC as a portal to do these kinds of transactions. It might not be the right fit for you, depends on a number of factors. But if anybody out there wants to lend money to a nonprofit for that 88%, we've done that. We've crowdfunded those investments in the past. So feel free to reach out to me. My information is at the end of the slide. It's showing on the screen now. The next one, Madeline, you should probably jump in too, but there's a question about Hingham, Mass. It sounds like leadership there is open to different ideas. We get this from time to time where, we need to lend our support and maybe send a letter that says, hey, we're behind this. We're always happy to help with any policy initiatives. So feel free to reach out and we'll do everything we can to help, help work with leadership there to see what we can do. And Madeline, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, happy to chime in on that one. Hingham is a municipality. We are definitely willing to talk to the munis, and a lot of them have some policy for solar. The challenge is that they don't. The incentives are just not quite as strong. So usually they don't have full retail net metering, and they're also not eligible for the smart incentive, unfortunately. What we could do is size a solar array, to meet the organization's electricity needs, and then you would directly cover your electric bill, but you would not be able to get this additional revenue stream from the SMART program. But we would be more than happy to speak with Hingham Electric and find out in more detail about what their solar policies are. Yeah, thank you for asking.
The next question here, and thank you, Madeline, for that, from Virginia. What about condos, which are a nonprofit? Can this program work for them? So I'll answer my part of that, which is yes. We've actually worked with HOAs, is probably what you're asking. You're right, they're a 501c4, I believe, but there isn't a tax appetite. But they would be eligible for the CollectiveSun discount. Madeline, is there any mission alignment with HOAs with Resonant Energy?
We have done some work with condos. Condos have often very interesting decision-making structures. And we have found it difficult with condos, even more so than other sort of institutional nonprofits, that the biggest challenge we've seen is actually having all of the condo trustees or sometimes all of the condo owners sort of buy in to the idea and buy in sort of monetarily to the solar project. So we definitely would be open to talking about the condo, and I could share a little bit more detail about sort of what we've seen and what have been the obstacles. So they, I would say, technically can participate in these programs. And the main challenge with condos has been the decision-making structure.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There are challenges with HOAs and condos. I think the ones we've done, we were offsetting common area load. By that I mean, maybe there's a pool or some sort of common area. We weren't offsetting energy directly to the units. So the decision-making process was a little bit different in those cases. But Virginia, if you want to reach out, we'll be happy to talk with you. The next question is from Alan. Alan, you actually mentioned the contractor's name, and since you mentioned it, I'll share it with everybody. You mentioned Synistics. Well, we know them, we've worked with them, if your church is interested in solar, Resonant Energy can help, of course, and you should be eligible for the discount. I see no reason why you wouldn't be. I'll keep going here. Alan, again, mentioned the contractor's name, Scout Solar in Arizona. They're offering no cost installations. That's probably, Alan, probably a power purchase agreement or a lease, which could be an excellent option. If you're looking for a zero down option, that's one way to go about it. Just do a power purchase agreement or a lease, or we have something called Collective PACE, which is a zero down option you might be eligible for. But there are options for no cost installations or zero down installations. And I know Resonant doesn't work in Arizona, but Resonant, one of the things that they would do is look at other options like that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. The benefit of no cost solar installation, which as Matt mentioned is either a power purchase agreement or a solar site lease, is that it's, as it sounds, there's often no upfront cost. And then the trade-off is lower savings over time for most of those programs. But for some organizations, that is the best pathway.
And then Tim asked, do you think there will be a second SMART program? Madeline, what do you think?
A second SMART program. So there is a strong precedent in Massachusetts of there being some type of state-run incentive program. I think what we're most likely going to see is the state extend the SMART program into, you saw on that chart, we have blocks out to block 8. There's conversation at this, there's conversation at the policy level about extending that to blocks, 12, 13, which is great. And the downside only being that since that incentive steps down each block, they're not going to ramp up the incentive retroactively. They're probably going to extend the lowest level of the incentive. So they won't, I don't think, get rid of it completely, but they will not retroactively increase the amount available.
Thank you, Madeline. And Mary asked, was a webinar recorded? And can I show it to others in my nonprofit? Yes, it was recorded. We'll send you the link. And yes, please do. We'd be happy if you did that. So thank you.
Definitely.
John asked, hello, John. Full amount of solar carport mounted. Okay, so we have a full solar carport. Can the entire structure be financed? The answer is yes. So John, let's talk offline, and we can definitely do that. Grant would like a copy of the slides.
You bet. Yeah, for everyone who signed up on the Eventbrite, you should have received a reminder email from me a couple hours ago. That is the list of email addresses I have that I will send the slides and the recording out to. So if anyone who's listening now did not sign up for the Eventbrite, it means I don't have your email address. So either, well, I think probably the sort of RSVP has closed for that. So just make sure to send me an email so that I have your contact information.
And Phoebe asked a question. She said, if we work with churches who aren't ready to have solar or can't for whatever reason, but are eager to support solar locally, how best can they get involved in helping other NPOs in the region to have solar in community solar gardens? Could that be a part of that? So Madeline, I'll comment on this and you can jump into.
Great.
On our side, yes, we are licensed to issue securities, a loan basically, so that we can lend money to offer that through our portal. We can do this. For those of you who are familiar with Kickstarter, where you basically give money and you get something in return, we have a similar platform where we can raise money through our portal and we can loan money out to nonprofits to do these projects. And we have a program called Sun for All, and that's just for Southern California. That's for that. We've done a couple of projects just under a couple $1 million in total on that. But if anybody is interested in learning more about how you can directly potentially invest in these projects, you could donate or invest, reach out to me directly, and I can give you more information. So if anyone's interested in that, we'd love to talk with you. And Madeline can talk more about the community solar, I think, in Massachusetts.
Yeah, that's right. And so there's sort of the first answer, and then there's the answer for Hingham, since it's a municipal electric company. But for most Eversource and National Grid residents, you can participate in community solar. Like, for example, with the case study church that I highlighted, they had the option to either sell their electricity to another nonprofit or to sell it to congregants or community members. And we can set that up fairly easily with the utility to set you up as a subscriber to these local community solar arrays, which is a pretty exciting opportunity, because many of you have probably heard there are these companies that are doing sort of big community solar farms, and usually National Grid territory, and you can sign up to be an off-taker from one of those. And we don't work with that, though that does exist, but we do work with setting people up and doing some matchmaking to find a community solar array in your neighborhood, on a church or on another institution that we can set you up to buy your electricity from that institution. In Hingham, again, because the municipal electric companies don't really talk with the big IOUs, with Eversource and National Grid, we can't set that up, unfortunately, for you to participate in one of these that's outside of Hingham. But for others, you can find one within your utility, typically. And thinking about supporting locally, there's a lot to think through of what that could look like. We are also trying to set up other types of funds or grant programs that can help get solar up on other organizations, maybe that don't have access to the same incentives, or have pre-installation barriers before they can move forward with solar. And so helping make those funds a reality is definitely something that we are looking for people to do. And we can follow up and talk more on that. I see a next question from Tim. When do you think Massachusetts will extend its net metering cap? So to first explain to others sort of what that's referring to, in Massachusetts, different utilities and different zones have what's called a cap on net metering, of which that's a redundant way to explain what this is, but it just essentially means that program where you can get the full retail value of that excess kilowatt hour above a certain threshold of a project in largely National Grid territory. National Grid won't give you that full credit back. You only get like a very small fraction of it, which strongly disincentivizes organizations that have roof space to exceed their capacity, because they're not getting that same value back from the utility. So when will Massachusetts extend it? Oh gosh, I can't speak to that. It's been, I think, an ongoing fight for solar advocates for a long time. I know recently there was a solar roadmap bill passed at the state level, and a lot of actually clean energy policies moving through the Massachusetts State House. So hopefully some of those we can get the utilities on board and help them see the shared mission and their role in actually making that a reality. Because there's a huge disincentive right now for any institution to build beyond their electricity needs because of that net metering cap. Happy to also share out when I put this together. I think what I will actually definitely do is I can include an update on the solar policies in Massachusetts right now, which ones are moving forward, which ones need more support. and the implication they have on different, what the actual policies.
Thanks, Madeline, for that. And there was actually a question in between, and I had you on mute, or I was on mute because I was typing, trying to answer some questions. The last question, which was in between these two, and I answered it in the Q&A, is that, Madeline, there's actually a typo in your phone number.
Oh, that's
so
right.
I sent that off. Yeah, so I let everybody know that it's 506 there. And
Right.
obviously we'll correct that before that's sent off. But thanks for those who caught it, and I sent everyone a reply.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thank you for catching that.
Yeah.
617-506-9248.
So I think that's it for the we're at an hour here, just about, and we answered all the questions. Unless anything else comes in right now, I think we covered everything, and I think everyone on the calls, feel free to reach out to either of us or both. We're happy to help in any way we can. And I appreciate everybody's time.
Yeah, I echo that. Really nice to see so many people on the call, so many people interested in solar. And if folks are open to it, what I'll do when we send this out is share a brief, little feedback survey, if you wouldn't mind filling it out, to let us know sort of what parts of this resonated the most, and what information you'd be interested in the future. So please stay tuned for that. And have an excellent evening to the East Coasters and the West Coasters, and we'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.